Cancer, and welcome to your in-depth forecast for year 2022. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. Now, I'm going to structure this by first of all looking at the solar return of the 4th of December 2021, because that eclipse provides a 6-month backdrop and only 3 weeks of it is into 21. So the first half of the new year is still very actively influenced by that Sagittarius eclipse. I'm then going to explain to you about the solar return. Share a will on the screen, your solar return as this new year begins. And you can see precisely where the major players are and how they're interacting with one another. And that provides a backdrop for the whole year. Now, of course, your ruler is the moon. So every time we have an eclipse, you're very influenced by this process. And there's going to be 4 this year, 2 lunar, 2 solar. But they're going across the axis of the 5th and the 11th house of your situation, which is very much to do with sociability, creativity, joyfulness, the 5th house, and how we interact with others in terms of the 11th house. Now also the North Node returns to the sign of Taurus, and that's exciting for you because that's the 11th house of the future. You also already have Uranus there, and that's going to continue for the whole year. Now Saturn, of course, has been in your 8th house of shared resources, but also around intimacies. So that's going to continue for the whole of year 2022, as is Pluto in the sign of Capricorn in your sector of relating. And of course Neptune, the planet of dreams, continues in your 9th house of expansion. But Mars, the planet of drive, makes a 5-month journey through your 12th house, a very tender transit which occurs from the end of August through to the end of the year. There's also a retrograde in that, so that's going to be interesting to look at. And of course Jupiter. Jupiter is going to be making its way through 2 zodiac signs this year for you, house 9, but also house 10, your sector of success. And I will also look at the Cancer new moon, which is on the 29th of June, which forges a square with Jupiter. So that's going to be very influential. But before I begin, just know that you can sign up for your free daily horoscope to be fired to your device each morning by clicking on the subscription button underneath this video. Also, if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. And if you'd like to ascend above your zodiac forecast and understand what's happening for you as an individual based on your personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, you can buy your year 2022 forecast and get the rest of 2021 free if you order it in year 2021, or if you order it in 22, you can get 12 months from the time of the order plus your character analysis and that 30% off. Please see the link beneath this video. So let's revisit that solar eclipse of the 4th of December 2021. And the fascinating thing about that was that the Sun and the Moon were alongside Mercury in your 6th house. Now this is about physical health, but it's also about organisation and it's about structure. So it's quite Virgoan, even though it's in the expansive Sagittarius. It's Virgoan for you. The overlay is your 6th house. But also Venus, the planet of relating, is conjunct Pluto and will be for the whole of December broadly in your 7th house of relating. So I think as last year came to a close, something big was cooking around a relationship situation. And as we go into the new year, you can see on the screen your personal solar return. And you can see the Sun, Venus in its retrograde, which began on the 19th of December. Venus and Pluto are therefore continuing to be conjunct, but also alongside Mercury, the planet of communication, all in your 7th house along with the Sun. So relationships are going to be a massive part of your story this year. If it was just the Sun, yes, how we relate to others is always critically important, but having Venus conjunct Pluto, especially in retrograde, suggests there's going to be some deep thinking about how you relate to other people, or how particular close relationships already in your situation can be transformed. And the key is Mercury, because Mercury being conjunct Venus and Pluto suggests that listening is going to be as important as expressing how you feel too. But also you can see on the screen that the Moon and Mars are in Sagittarius, and they're conjunct, and that can be quite a volatile mix. So it could be that your relationships at work, the 6th house governs that, are going to be a big part of the story. Also, you will see the midpoint between the Moon in Sagittarius and the Sun in Capricorn is 28 degrees Sagittarius. So if we take the solar return as providing a backdrop for the whole year, as it will, then a very, very influential set of energies around not just your sector of relating, but also your sector of practicalities, the 6th house. So reforming your health, your physical structures, making life more organised, but improving those relationships is going to be a big part of your story. So how does the solar return work? Well, imagine going to a night school lecture, and it's for art, and the tutor asks you on your canvas to put a watercolour on. So you do that, then you pick up your charcoal and you outline the physical subject you want to draw. It could be something in nature, it could be an animal, it could be maybe even a still life of some kind. But once you have that framework, then you fill those in with more colour to create more detail. And that's what the planetary movements in the year create, that detail. But that backwash on that canvas is the solar return, and that is therefore going to be influential all through this year. And of course, last year's most influential influence was Saturn square Uranus. We have 3 points of it in February, June, and also in December, the 24th to be precise, and they're going to be in a right angle through to the end of the 3rd week of January this year. So what does that mean? Well, Uranus is in the part of your sector to do with your future, but Uranus is about rebelliousness, but it's also about the truth. It's about authenticity. So in your 11th house, it's about the people you hang around with, but it's also your direction of travel. And because Saturn is in your sector of resources, you may feel conflicted at points this year, just like you did last year, about whether you're doing the right things for your heart and your spiritual happiness, Uranus, against your more physical needs, security, Saturn in the 8th house. So there may be something that still needs to shift there, and that may mean that you have to give something up in order to gain something. So there is some toggling between those two areas that will take place this year. Now, the other thing that's notable about the solar return is the North Node, which has been in a very psychological sector for you for the last 18 months, is squaring up with Jupiter. Jupiter is in your sector of expansion as this year starts, the sign of Pisces, and that just suggests that things can take on a kind of life force of their own. There is the potential for amplification around quite subtle strands in your situation. Just watch that one. Now, it is the case the North Node is going to be moving on the 19th of January, and it's going to be in the sign of Taurus through till July 2023. And for you, I think the North Node being in the 11th house is a more comfortable position for it to be. So this is about how you connect to others, it's shared values, it's what we do in terms of communities. It's very societal instinct is the North Node. Then the North Node is where we have the potential for joys and opportunities. It's almost like a mini Jupiterian influence. Jupiter, of course, being the planet of fortune. So new friendships, because I do think there can be some refinement about the friendships you've got with Uranus in the 11th house. So some people may make way, but newer people can come in, and a newer life direction can be part of that process. So it's very exciting that the North Node moves into Taurus for you this year, because if we think of it in terms of elements, the river bed carries the water, so earth carries water, so the sign of Taurus is earth, and that carries the water element of your sign. So that's a very conducive switch for you. So this brings us to the Mercury retrogrades. Now, ordinarily we have 3 a year. We've actually got the first taste of a 4th right at the end of this year in your sector of relating. So remember, Venus in retrograde at the start of the year in your sector of relating suggests there could be perhaps a reconnection with someone from your past. There could be a lot of deep thinking about an existing relationship. There could be a change, and this may all be really solidified as the year comes to a close, as you reflect on what the 12 months of 2022 has given you. But in January, on the 14th, Mercury goes into retrograde in Aquarius. Then on the 11th of May in Gemini, and then the 10th of September in Libra. Now they're all air signs, which is very much to do with communication. But in terms of your house overlay taking the sun at 0 degrees Cancer, it means the first one is in house 8, about shared resources, that's where Saturn is, and very scorpionic. The second one is in house 12, very much to do with reflection, and the third one is in your home zone, the 4th house, very much about where you live and emotions, and very much in keeping with the characteristics of your sign. But each of those retrogrades then rewinds into an earth sign, house 7 Capricorn, house 11 Taurus, and house 3 Virgo for you. So whatever those retrogrades start off with, however you're thinking, whatever you're discussing, I think essentially there's going to be an emotional dimension to that. And then when you come through each of those retrogrades, you're going to be trying to grapple with what it actually meant physically because of the earth element that they reverse into. Now, of course, the other big player this year is Jupiter, which I've mentioned already in its square with the North Node at the turn of the year. And Jupiter then goes on to make its way into your 10th house, the sector of success, which occurs on May the 10th. Now, I have to be honest with you, a lot of YouTube astrologers are going to be putting a huge amount of emphasis on Jupiter being in your 10th house of success. And it can bring success for you for sure. But we also have to be careful that we don't see Jupiter as being some kind of wonderful, amazing influence, and it's very binary, to Saturn, which is very dark and awful. It just isn't that simple. And I can tell you from the personal one-to-one consultation work that I do, that Saturn moving across house cusps, for example, often is a trigger for success and rewards. Jupiter is about optimism, and it is about faith, and it is about hope. And we do need those things when we set our intentions, because without doing that, we would never bring about a visualization of what we want to achieve. And of course, it is a huge all. And the fantastic thing about Jupiter here is it could see you aiming high. And it is going to be very helpful to you through till July the 28th, but then it goes into a retrograde. The retrograde sees it then go direct on the 22nd of November, but not before it goes back into the sign of Pisces on October the 28th. So you can see it's retracing its steps. So if you are making a big bid in terms of a worldly goal, particularly on the back of the Cancer new moon, which squares up with Jupiter on the 29th of June. The new moon each year is particularly important for every zodiac sign, but especially so for you because the moon governs your sign. So therefore, if you have the moon squaring Jupiter, that in itself is a very abundant, very buoyant and very hopeful combination. Even people who have Jupiter opposite the moon or square the moon in their natal horoscopes are often generous people, hale and hearty. Much better to be generous to a fault than mean to a fault, of course. So having the power of the new moon in your sign is very, very important because it enables the moon energy that you possess as an innate part of your being to really get the greatest traction in the whole year cycle. The second new moon, which is really helpful to you, is the Leo new moon because, of course, the sun governs the sign of Leo and is allied to your moon as they're in conjunction. So those two are definitely the most important for you, but none more so than the Cancerian new moon. So I think on the 29th of June, whether it's in terms of dazzling people with a new appearance, bidding for a new goal or aim, revitalising ongoing strands that are important to you, you can show a lot of confidence and thrust. But just be aware that almost within 1 month, Jupiter slams on the brakes, as it seems to us from the Earth, and things can slow down. So it is important to have those hopes, but also be realistic. And that brings us to the eclipses for this year, because we have a polar series going between the 11th and the 5th house. Now, if you go back to when we had the cardinal eclipses going across your sign and Capricorn, which went on from 2017 through to the early part of 2020, that was a particularly difficult set of eclipses for the whole of the world, because we have the nurturing energies of your sign competing with the other cardinal planet, which is Capricorn, which is very much to do with what we desire in terms of a material world. So a bit of a battle going on between the potential for security and having bigger and better of this and that. And security, of course, as you well know, doesn't just come in terms of emotions. It does come from the physical form, but it's about finding the right balance. But this year's eclipse series begins on the 30th of April in sensational style with a conjunction with Uranus. So those new friends that I speak of can really start to come into your world for the 6 months from that point. It also forges a brilliant sextile to Mars. Now, Mars is going to have a major influence on all of our situations from the end of August through to the end of the year, but particularly you. But I'll go into that more in a bit. But Mars at this point in the year is in the sign of Pisces. Now, it's not its best in Pisces, it has to be said, but for you, this is supercharging your desire to widen your horizons. So travel, particularly with a collective, a group of friends, or travelling towards some kind of new objective which is fresh, stimulating, and as I used that word before, authentic for the person you're becoming, could see you liberate yourself from something that used to be a mainstay of your situation. Just be conscious of that. On the 16th of May, however, there is a lunar eclipse in your sister water sign of Scorpio. So you may find that quite a few people want a piece of you, and that old adage, we can't keep all of the people happy all of the time, may really become much more part of your thinking from that point onwards. Some sort of toggling between whether you want the most fantastic love relationship in the world but never see your friends, or are you spending so much time socialising you're not giving yourself the chance to enjoy joys in your life, either around a partner, or perhaps even you're spending less time than is ideal on your own creative pursuits, or even time with your children if you have them. The solar eclipse on the 25th of October is in reverse. So that's actually in the sign of Taurus again. And again, it's pushing you to think more about pleasures and joys and how you can interact with others. And we have the lunar eclipse on the 8th of November, once again back in the sign of Scorpio. So it's a fascinating set of eclipses for you this year, and how this unfolds for you is going to be interesting, because with having Uranus and the North Node in the 11th house, I think there's every chance you will be heading in a new direction. But because of that solar return, which influenced both practicalities and close relationships, I think there could be some seismic shifts in who you're relating to and how before the end of the year. Now, I mentioned to you about Mars. I actually said before that it's the end of August, but it's the 20th of August. Mars moves into the 12th house of your situation. And it will be retracing its steps from the 30th of October through to the end of the year. So this is where a past relationship that I mentioned with Venus retrograde conjunct Pluto at the start of this discussion that's where you may be revisiting your links to people in the last quarter of this year. Just who, just how, is really within your compass, within your control. But of course, with Mercury retrograde, as the year comes to a close, maybe that will be the connection point, the final point where you get that moments of clarity around that relationship that may have been a big part of your thinking for the whole of this year. But certainly there are wonderful opportunities for you. You can make progress with Jupiter's help for sure, Cancer. You are someone with superb ability when it comes to executive talent. So it doesn't matter if you're a line manager, a supervisor, or managing home. You have an ability to make the most of the resources you have and make them come to life. But the Sagittarius energy on the back of that solar eclipse of the 4th of December and also of the solar return is saying getting more efficient and organised and feeling fitter and stronger is going to help to propel you forwards with a greater intent, I think, around your relationships, but also where you find joy, happiness, creativity and sparkle in your life. And that's what the eclipse series is about. And with that Mars in the 12th house, particularly with that retrograde in the last phase of the year, there could be some deep thinking this year which reorientates you in a different direction than you may have thought was possible as this year begins. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Remember, if you'd like to ascend above your zodiac forecast, embrace individual astrology based on your time, date and place of birth, please see the link beneath this video to get your year 2022 personal forecast and character analysis. Get the rest of 21 free, or 12 months from the point of order in year 22.